Good morning, everyone, and welcome to episode 5 of 6 vulnerable conversations between 2 women. I am Arielle Brown, and this is my colleague, collaborator, and partner in crime for this 6-week video series, Jamie Thompson. And what we are doing in each of these conversations is going into a raw, live, unscripted dialogue into aspects of what it means to be a woman navigating the world of connection, communication, intimacy, relating, and having the conversations that so many of us are collectively experiencing in our internal worlds, but rarely speaking or bringing to the surface in our relationships and in our external reality. So our intention in these conversations is to open up a space where these very important, edgy, juicy conversations can actually have a space and permission to breathe and be heard, in the hopes that these are conversations that will ripple out from this space. And today, we are going to be diving into the conversation of competition, jealousy, and scarcity mindset in women. And we were just having a super rich conversation here about this. And Jamie, what are you excited about this conversation?
I'm excited about this conversation because I came from I used to swim in a pool of jealousy and competition with other women specifically. And in my own process of learning to transmute that fire into passion and creativity and life force and reframing the energy to be something that I actually experience as something that empowers me now and inspires me now. And one of my very favorite things is helping women to access their power through some of these uncomfortable or perceived negative emotions. And this is one of the very greatest ones that has such an ability to yield such a great power and force when redirected properly.
Thank you. I'm curious. So, you were telling me a little bit about your history that led to you being able to alchemize jealousy. I'm curious if you'd share with us.
Yes. So initially, okay, so when I was in high school, I was I really wanted to be cool and popular. And I was, kind of like a stoner chick hanging out with the stoner people. And I really wanted to be like the homecoming queen. Like it was my yearning and my desire. I would never tell anyone that because I was masquerading with the mask of, oh no, I'm cool being uncool. It was kind of like my mask. But the truth was I really, really wanted it. And fast forward, I moved to LA and became an actor at one point. A lot of people don't know that part of my journey. Feels like another lifetime. I was an actor in Los Angeles. And that was another place where it was like I was always looking to the cool people and the popular people and the people who I thought were more successful than me, and the women that were more beautiful, and the people that just seemed to have it all. And I had to work so hard, but they were just naturally really great. I had a lot of that still going on. And I remember one moment when I went into one of the most popular acting teachers in Los Angeles. She was the person that you go to if you want to be successful. And I was really excited because my friend had referred me there, and my friend had been accepted to work with her directly, and she was really, really her champion. This acting teacher was really her champion, and that really meant something. And so I went in and auditioned for her. And she said to me, well, I'm not going to put you in my class because I don't think you're ready. And I think you're presenting yourself incorrectly. I think rather than being a leading lady, I think you're more of the pretty character best friend type. And I remember at that moment, my whole being just lit up, and it was like I was on fire. It was like there was just, don't tell me that. And it's so funny because I then took that energy and it fed my story even more of, okay, I need to become, I need to be prettier. I need to be better. I need to work harder. It's like it created this, like this monster. It fed the monster in me that thought that I needed to do something in order to be wanted and be accepted. And so this was early 20s. And so through the process of really learning how to burn in that fire, that moment where she acted like she said something and it activated this fire in me, and learning how to transmute that into the pure energy that it is that I can create with. And there's a few ways that I've learned to do that, but I'm curious if you have any thoughts, Arielle, before I go into that.
Well, what it makes me think of is like when I think of when I've really had to burn in the fire, like of that jealousy, it's really been through. So I've been in an open relationship that's taken many forms for the past a little over 2 years, and um, for me, I always like, and I still am a very competitive person. The beautiful thing is that I actually feel like that competition takes on healthy forms now, as opposed to
Mm-hmm.
kind of like aspects of competition that I try to hide or minimize. And the place where I was really forced to be honest about like my jealousy and just kind of like ugly like competition and comparison between women was when I dated someone who we were agreeing to be in an open relationship. And it was this place of like, I had been in monogamous relationships my entire life. I didn't want to be in a monogamous relationship. I wanted to have experiences with other men. And as a result, I needed to allow my partner to do this as well, or else it would be this double standard that I'd just be like, Arielle, that's not like, that's just not going to work. And what it really required in me was to look at a deep level where I thought that I was interchangeable or where I thought that I was replaceable. Because if, and I'm not advocating that everyone do this isn't necessarily the way that you need to overcome jealousy, but for me, that's just kind of the approach that I took is like, where do I think that I could be replaced by anyone? That there's this interchangeability to women, because so much of us are conditioned to associate, oh, like our value as a woman is associated with how attractive we are, or how good a lay we are, or something like that. So, like, I've gotten to this place where I've gotten super connected to one, the badass that I am. Like, I just feel like I'm a fucking amazing woman, fucking amazing human being. And that, like, every other woman that I come into contact with is equally a fucking amazing human being who is entirely different from me. And to be able to not compare and instead actually get to this place where I just had a sister reach out to me yesterday who's wanting to explore being, you know, like playing with some dominant submissive roles with a man. And she's like, how would you feel about me doing that with your partner? And to actually be in this place where I'm so grounded in myself and like loving in my connection with this woman that I can be like, yeah, like let's create a container that feels good for all of us and explore that. And it has so not always been that way. So that's a bit of my personal experience about it. And there's more, but I wanna go back over to you now.
Yeah. One thing I'm hearing in what you're sharing is becoming intimately connected with what we actually are.
Mm.
And that was a big part of the journey for me, you know, kind of going back to this experience I had in Los Angeles, when I really started sitting in my power and taking off in a new way was when I realized and like just held up the mirror and just sat there with myself. And this is actually an exercise I have actually done. Sat there and looked at myself for 20 minutes, 20 minutes a day for like 2 weeks naked, and just being with what I actually am and looking at what I actually look like. Noticing the asymmetry in my face, or the that I think I have kind of like weird calves. I mean, it's like actually just being with the parts of myself that I might normally want to hide or judge or think that they need to be different.
Mm-hmm.
And because a lot of times what I was finding, and my experience being an actor, a lot of it was trying to be something that I didn't think I was,
Mm-hmm.
instead of letting myself be inspired by what other people authentically are, and allowing that to bring the fire that's burning in me. When I see that, is the fire of inspiration that's trying to point me into who I actually am.
Mm-hmm.
And when I sit in that, it's like this new part of myself comes forth without the mask of trying to do it like someone else, but rather the experience of who I am. And that it has nothing to do with anyone else. And if I'm trying to seek validation from an acting teacher or a partner or a friend or the media or Facebook, if I'm trying to seek validation, then I am there's self-abandonment. It's like I'm abandoning myself in order to have approval from someone else, which it perpetuates the experience of jealousy.
Totally. Like what comes to mind, and it's an analogy that I've used before, is when we get overly focused on comparing ourselves with someone else. It's like we're at the forefront of our own ship that's like sailing through the sea. And what can happen is when we go into competition or comparison or jealousy, we can wind up jumping off our own ship and trying to kind of like get this other ship to collude with the direction that we are going. And what happens is, one, we become totally ungrounded and centered in our own ship and then we're trying to pull this other ship along with us that has its own agenda because it's its own being. So like what I'm also hearing you say around, comparison around beauty, like I know I've experienced that in my business as well. Like the times where I am most successful in my business is where I am just really centered and connected to like, what am I inspired by right now? And when I'm not processing it or filtering it through like, oh, well, how many Facebook likes did I get there? Or like how is this going to be in relation? It is when I'm able to move like the most easefully, when it tends to generate the most, whether it's like prosperity or connection or whatever it is. Like there is something around really just being in my own microcosm of experience that allows me to invite in more of what I want. And the piece that I feel like we're adding on here is that like that's awesome, but we don't want this to just be a one-woman show. So how do we really stay centered in the badassery of our own experience and our own humanity, while having it so that there is enough space and ability to hold like other women's amazingness without needing to minimize our own?
Absolutely. There is I had an experience, and so one of the pieces that where this kind of transitions for me is as I stopped being jealous of other people. And for me, jealousy might come through as like a passing thought, but what sticks is like an inspiration and a likeness. And so I just want to share a couple things that I do around that.
Mm-hmm.
And then how it's kind of played for me in the other realm of people being jealous of me, and how I approach that. Because as I was talking to some friends and clients about doing this particular segment of our podcast, they were like, yeah, I don't know what to do. It's like when women are jealous of me, it's just really uncomfortable. And so I really want to speak to that.
Mm-hmm.
But specifically when I find someone who like brings something up in me, for me, it's reframed to aliveness. So if someone activates like what could be jealousy, it's inspiration, it's aliveness, it's something that I lean into. If I feel that with someone, that is the person I'm going to go up and talk to in the room. If I feel that, I'm going to be like, hi, who are you? How are you? What's happening? Let's talk, and really drop in with that person and lean into the connection. Because many times when I do that, I find that there's a piece in the way that they're being or what they're doing in the world that is reflecting something that I want, that I might not actually know that I want yet. And it's like, I like feel into it, and it's like, oh, okay. So she has a way of, being really back in, sitting in her throne, yet also really compassionate at the same time. That was one I encountered recently where I was like, what is it about this woman? There's something. And I ended up speaking with her at an event for about half an hour, and discovered a way of being that she embodies that I was like, yes, I'm bringing that out in myself more. And so that's kind of like I guess like an actual technique that I use when I do experience what could be jealousy and what could turn me into a place of competition or minimizing myself or idolizing someone else, and rather being able to lean into it.
That's so key. And like, here's the main distinction, that in order to be able to do this, like in order to be able to transmute jealousy and actually be able to receive the quality that we're wanting in this other woman, we need to be able to shift out of judgment and into celebration of that woman. And that can be or any person, and that can be one of the most challenging things, because we're conditioned in our culture for women to like, oh, if a woman's too sexy, judge her. If a woman's too fat, judge her. If a woman is too prude, judge her. If a woman is too outspoken, judge her. It's like all these qualities that we desire to cultivate in ourselves. If our preemptiveness is to judge it, it literally blocks us from the ability to absorb it and integrate it and express it in ourselves. This is what I've found.
Yes. Yes. And this goes directly into the next piece that I want to talk about, which is how to handle it when someone is jealous of us. Because that's the other side of this, right? And the tendency is, for me, and what, as I was talking about this with other people, is to be like, oh, women are jealous of me, and I don't like it. Like, what do I do about it? And then to judge those who are jealous of us, right? At the same way that we probably used to judge at some point in our life others who we thought were better than us. It's like judgment consciousness that actually creates jealousy even as a possibility. And so when someone is jealous of me and I see that, my initial experience is, yes, there's work here. There's something juicy. And rather than close to that woman or dim myself in some way to make her feel better, or take in her energy that she's projecting, her power that she's projecting outside of herself onto me, rather than taking that on to gratify my own ego, I rather hold a space of reflection and in not actually taking the energy on, but actually saying yes to it, meeting it, and holding it as like something for her to see and a new space for her to step into. And much of the time I will really open to a woman where I have a sense that that's going on, and I'm tuned into what feels like there could be some kind of jealousy or putting me on a pedestal or something like that happening. And it's actually just turning into it. And many times I'll even, depending on the nature of the conversation, I'll even say, is there something here for you? Or is there something that's triggering about me for you? It's one of my favorite questions to ask people in general. I just think it's interesting. Like what triggers you about me? Or what do you find really difficult about me? Because many times it's a really great reflection for me as a human. And I just think it's where the juice is. Like if we can get right to that, then there's like a baseline of what we can really work from. I had a moment at Burning Man a couple years ago where I had just led a workshop on really embodying our sensuality, sexuality, and intimacy, and what the difference is between the three, and having freedom and liberation in it. And a woman came up and was like, gosh, you're so amazing. I don't know if I could ever be like you. And I was just like, wait, hold on a second. Like, what is that? Do you want to sit down and have a conversation about this? We sat down 15 minutes, had this conversation that completely rewired and changed the way that she saw herself in her own sensuality. And it changed the way that I experienced people being jealous of me, because we leaned into it. And now we're friends. She actually became a client at one point. I mean, it was this really magical interaction that happened because we decided to take that energy and just go right into the root of it.
Mm, it's so beautiful. And I would actually love to hear your perspective on something, because what I'm hearing is like, oh, you become open and you become reflective. And what it's like, what I'm hearing you say is like, oh, like when a woman expresses some type of jealousy. So I had a recent experience, which I was telling you about earlier, where I'm in Hawaii for a few months now, and I'm cultivating a relationship with this sanctuary up here. And I, like last week, I went to this ecstatic dance, and there was this woman who was standing behind the house-made chocolate and elixir bar. And I'm just a total foodie. And like this really like beautiful younger woman went up to her, and I was just like, hey, like, are these house made? What's the deal with these? And she's like, oh yeah, like my partner made them. And we're just like getting into this really sweet, juicy space together. And then like I go off on my merry way. And then like I come back maybe an hour later after I've been dancing, and who I'm assuming it's her partner who's there. And I go up to him and I was like, oh, like, so you the man that made the chocolates? And like, he's just totally in his element. Like he's the chef there. And like, he's like, oh yeah, like we have this state of the art facility and we grow our own cacao. And like, I have a background in culinary. So I'm just like lighting up. And not lighting up from this place of like, oh, I want to like have sex with this man, or like, oh, like I want to date this man, but like, oh, like what a beautiful life this man has created for himself, and like holding that space of turn on and excitement. And like his partner is standing there. And at this point, like the conversation is with the man. And what I notice out of the periphery of my eye and like our energy fields is that I feel her starting to shut down. And like, I know in that moment, like if I was to shift focus and include her, it would be from a place of caretaking. So I didn't do that. And I just feel like it's like I could feel like she's shutting down. This beautiful like flower that started to bloom with us is kind of like curling back up, and like the entire dynamic between us has shifted. And I could feel the part of me that wants to play like into like, oh, like not if I done something wrong, like luckily I'm not, that wasn't in that place, but like, oh, this is happening. And I refuse to shut down my experience, the ability to experience joy. Like the point here is that we all feel the freedom to be alive and to celebrate and to be turned on without fear that we are threatening anyone else. and like, I'm going to be working at this place. So I have a desire to connect with this woman. And I have my own ideas of how I'll kind of initiate that and engage that. But I'm curious, for a woman who perhaps isn't expressing jealousy or competition, but is instead shutting down, how would you work with that?
Yeah, I would approach it. I would absolutely lean into it still. And, even approach her and say something like, hey, I have this experience, and I'm not sure if this experience is shared reality or if it's my own story that's going on. Are you open to hearing it? And get like a kind of,
Buy-in.
A buy-in, right? So it's not this unsolicited dropping a bomb on this person. And then I would let her know, like, so my experience was, we had this really great connection. And then I started talking to your boyfriend or husband, and I felt the energy between us shift. And I want to see if that actually was going on for you. And then I'd also be willing to share, what was actually going on for me as well. So that, so that maybe we can create a different kind of relationship here, or something like that, where it's like giving her permission to have. And I also, I like to also say a disclaimer that's like, whatever you're experiencing is completely okay with me. And I just want you to know I accept whatever your experience actually is, and really use it as an opportunity to create a different level of sisterhood and be someone who is trustworthy in that way. I had an experience where something like this happened with a friend, a couple that I know. Her fiance and I were at a party before she got there, and one of the camera people came around and took a picture of us. And her and I happened to look a lot alike. We kind of we're like soul twins, we have this whole thing going. And so people were commenting on the photo, like, what, like, what's going on here? Why is he with this other, this other person, to her, like sending her private messages. And she was like, I didn't have an issue, but I'm a little bit like, what's going on? And so I was like, okay, so I called her and we had this really great conversation where, she wanted to know, what she really wanted to know was what my intentions were. And when she found out, that it was completely friendly, and there was nothing sexual going on, or not even the desire wasn't even sexual. Kind of like what you said, it was more of like just free and fun and having a good time with, maybe not even aware of what the potential damage could be with it. And so it was, just in this dropping in of what our actual intentions were, that everything got cleared up and our relationship became even deeper.
Yep. I look forward to that conversation.
Yeah. It's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's in conversations like these that this is where the transmutation happens. This is where the alchemy happens, is when we are willing to be like, I don't know how this conversation will look. I don't even know why I'm bringing this up. I feel a little bit awkward, because that's how I've had to approach it sometimes. It's like, this is really weird, might be out of left field, but this is what I'm experiencing. Are you experiencing that? Like, how do you feel about this? And something amazing always comes out of it.
Yep.
Even if I'm wrong, even if I'm wrong, and the person's like, oh no, I had just gotten a weird text from my boss, and it wasn't even about me at all. I mean, like, you don't really know until you ask. But then I find that I'm not operating with like an incorrect listening of this other person.
And this is so important at this point in our culture for we as women to be having these conversations. We're at this place where we're realizing the current model where um, it's not even that like that men are in charge. I guess this issue isn't about men. It's just the current paradigm around power and the current way that leadership has been cultivated, which leadership right now is like, oh, I can't have people as equals because then I won't have the power. There's a very kind of like linear hierarchical model. And I feel like a lot of what we're being called towards is a more circular model of power, a more communal like model of power, and more women learning how to step into leadership, as in like ancient cultures where like women were the one kind of like holding counsel. And in order for that to work, like we as like a human race need to learn how to hold power together. If we as women are to rise into power, we need to learn how to not secretly reject the feminine. Like we need to figure this out. Like it's not this thing that can be put on the back burner anymore. So it's like, how do we start doing this in our communities is a question that I'm looking towards, because along with my private coaching, the thing that I'm going into more and more is like, we want to expand, right? Like we want to change culture and change the way that culture emerges. And in order to do that, it all starts with like the culture of two. Like, how do we get rid of all the passive aggressive, the things that we're afraid to say for fear of another having more power than us, so that our culture and communities can start to shift where there's not that underlying agenda as well?
Absolutely. What you're bringing up in me is a question, and this kind of plays into the men and women aspect as well. And it's that sometimes I think that as women, we can become jealous of the power that men have and the way that they have it. And I know for me, I in relationship used to have this conversation of uh, equality and then competition about not feeling like I'm equal to him come up.
Mm.
And what's interesting about that is then I would start playing in the man's paradigm of competition with him, which is actually something that I didn't want.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a really valid question when we're creating community and looking around, whether it be to women or men, is do I actually want what this person has and is doing? And if I want it, that means that I'm willing to do the work to get it. Otherwise, the want is just a fantasy. And I think it's really easy to look and be like, wait, I want that kind of power, but like, yeah, it would be cool to be president of the United States, but do I want to do that kind of work? No, is the answer, right? It's like looking and seeing, do I actually want to do that work, or is that someone else's role that they are playing? And I don't need to be competitive about that's the role they are playing, because what actually feels much better for me and how this showed up in relationship for me is actually taking more of the feminine role. Like I actually enjoy being more receptive and softer, and I don't need to be equal to a man in a way that the man is. I can be different and fully in my power as well, but it looks different. And to compare them right next to each other wouldn't really give either justice, because it's like comparing a house and a box of apples. They just don't even make sense. It's not even a comparison that can be made. So I think in building community, it's like looking at what is the role that my highest self really wants to be playing, and how do I take the actions to create that? And what am I truly inspired by? And where is my desire really going? And some people want the role of being the activist, and some people want the role of being the healer, and some want the role of being the leader. And we all of ourselves are, sort of designed and called into being in different ways. And what I've seen with this in community is we can actually drop into a sort of flow as community, just like we can in relationship, where the energy that's actually being channeled through us and that wants to play through us is actually a divine fit for everyone that we are in relationship with, when we're really tuned into that. And in that place, there's not this separation consciousness of like competition for roles, but rather a dance of each person actually playing the role that is best suited to them at this time.
I love that. I had a recent experience of that where there were 4 couples that wound up coming together for this immersive weekend, 4 women and 4 men. And what happened was I met 3 other women, and each of us held such a unique pole of power. Like one woman was the holder of the temple space that we were staying at, and her power was like she was the conductor of ritual. Like she was the person who created sacred space. And there was another woman who was just like her ability to hold objective space for counsel. Like there is this beautiful like composure and kind of like just this matriarchal energy to her. And then another one of the woman, like there was this like kind of like fiery, like cat-like energy to her. And for me, it's just kind of this like playful, like curious, like going under the surface and kind of like shapeshifter energy. And we all had the experience of being able to sit in circle together and realize our own unique powers and feeling this thing that could soften in me, where I realized I didn't need to be everything. That it's what you're saying, and really looking at the part of us that feels like in order to be worthy, like in order to be lovable, in order to be successful, in order to be like beautiful and desirable, that we need to embody everything. And that's part of why so many like conscious, empowered, like focused women are totally burnt out and putting on acts of happiness when in the reality, like we're dying because we feel like we need to be everything.
I love this so much, the need to be everything. And I so relate with that, because that really strikes the chord of something that I always have my eye on, which is my perfectionism. That it's like this need to be the best, and to feel like I'm in perfect alignment and costume for the best of everything. And it's exhausting. I had an experience recently that kind of reminds me of your experience, where it was my birthday weekend and I had a bunch of friends together. We had a wonderful condo in Steamboat Springs, and, it was beautiful, beautiful weekend. And my group of friends, when we get together, we like to, it's a bunch of conscious entrepreneur, creator, visionaries. So when we get together, deep healing work, conscious adult play, all kinds of really wonderful aspects happen. And I was leading, and there's a way in which I lead really well with someone else. And it's just it's part of my receptive nature. I'm more of a responder than I am an initiator. And someone will initiate something and I will carry it through. But I'm not the one that initiates. Part of human design, I guess, for me. And what happened is one of the men, I'm so grateful he brought it forward, but he said, "I'm just super annoyed by the way you're leading this weekend." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Thank you for sharing. What do you want to see more of?" And he's like, "Well, it needs more structure. You know, like it's like we need to get like buy-in for these circles that we're holding in these experiences that we're creating. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you are so right. That is missing. Will you do it? And he's like, oh. And I was like, yeah, do it. Like, I would love that. And so what we ended up dropping into was this sort of surrendered leadership, where everyone is bringing forth their gifts. And my gift lies in the channel and in allowing what wants to come through. And this man's gift lies in creating the structure for that to happen. You know, so it was this perfect marriage where it was like, he was annoyed by something that he actually wanted to bring forth. And when he did, I was like, oh my God, you are so right. That is missing. That is definitely missing. And I need that. Thank you. And I felt so honored in being able to relax into what my actual gift was, instead of trying to do something that wasn't really in my zone of genius anyway. And it was really a great realization for me, because then moving forward, I'm aware of having someone hold that, or even more aware of holding it myself as like a conscious practice with structure and logic.
That's beautiful. It makes me think of the book, which I haven't completed this book, but you're familiar with the book Stealing Fire?
Yes. Oh, I love Jamie Wheel. Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember in the beginning, he was talking about these different organizations that utilize flow state as a way to be more effective. And he was talking about the Navy SEALs and this concept of dynamic subordinatism. And basically what he was talking about is that when the Navy SEALs go into, or is it the Navy? It's some, I think that's what it is. But when they go into some type of like mission, there's never one leader, but instead what happens is every single person in the group is a leader in their own right. And they drop into this place of group mind where like they're operating in a group, and the instant one of the people know what the next step is to lead, they step out in front and the group forms around that leader. And then when there's this intuitive like, oh, I know the next thing, then the next leader moves and the group moves around them. And I was just so turned on by this idea of like, we are all leaders. And when we're not so focused on being the best and like, is anyone close to me in the race, all of a sudden we can drop into this space where we can feel each other and then like connect to each other's gifts and allow different people to support and lead in the moments where they're meant to support and lead, so that the whole can move into its next evolution. And I feel like that's a lot of what this conversation is, not just between women, but between like humanity. What is the work that we need to do to allow each person's individual genius and leadership emerge and blossom, so that we as a collective can move forward?
I love what you're saying. I have chills. I mean, a big part of my private coaching work with intimate flow state is helping people to create this kind of group mind in their relationship, at the level of relationship, and then at the level of group, and then in the level of community, and in the level of world. I mean, it's like, this is where we're going, right? And the micro for the macro starts in our one-on-one relationships and starts in our group relationships. We want to change the world. Let's figure out how we can, when we walk into a room, start to be the one that is creating that flow state that can occur for everyone to step into, and start to be the one that's aware of people's gifts and championing them, and then stating what's missing. I think that's a big key is being able to take an objective stance in a room, rather than having all of our attention on self-consciousness and ourself and where am I in the pecking order, where am I in the hierarchy, you know, who likes me, who doesn't, and actually taking the perspective of what is missing in this space that I could bring.
Mm-hmm.
And just noticing that. And that, I believe, is what being a leader is noticing what's missing and bringing it, or noticing what's missing and seeing someone else that it feels like they have the capacity to fill in what's missing. If it's not me, being able to be like, that's actually not me. And I could try to bring that, but I think this person could bring that better, and I think that they could really elevate this experience. And then being willing to have that conversation, or just open up the door. It's not like telling people what to do, but rather opening up the door of like, well, what do you think is missing here?
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to bring? And really elevating each other such that this sort of group mind flow state can occur. And sometimes it starts with, I feel like our in for this is with the thing that we might be annoyed by. Like my friend at my birthday weekend, it's like the thing that he was annoyed by is the thing he wanted to bring. And
Mm-hmm.
I have noticed that for myself so many times, where I'm just like, this space, it's drab or something. And it's like, oh, well, you want to bring a dance party, so you should do that, or you want to bring like some lightness and playfulness in conversation because you think it's really serious. This happens to me in crowds of entrepreneurs a lot. I'm like, okay, everyone's like in this kind of like boring, constantly always only talking about workspace. And I like to then bring the playfulness and bring a sort of a different sexy fun vibe to these crowds where it might seem like it's a little out of place, but people always end up appreciating it and thanking me. And it's a part of what I bring that makes a difference, that used to be something that I was just constantly annoyed by in business crowds.
Mm-hmm. Well, and what I'm hearing, that's beautiful. But what I'm hearing is that in order to do that, we need to notice the assumption or the story that we're carrying, which runs something along the lines of, people don't want what I have to bring, or people don't want to give me what I want. And this is a big part of the coaching work that I do with people is, what are the underlying beliefs that you have about your relationship to the nature of your own desires, and that which inspires you in terms of how your intimate partners and the world wants to receive you? Because the stories that we are carrying about who we are and what our place is in the world can impact our ability to give our gifts to the fullest extent. And what I'm hearing in you is that you've done a level of work where you have such an approval for what your gifts and desires and inspirations are, that you aren't caught up in the story of is it okay for me to be me? So you can actually get out of your own way, become aware of what is going on in the group, because you're not so caught up in the struggle of self, that you can be present and really offer what is needed, which is why it's so important for us to do our inner work. And some of the easiest places to do that is in intimate and sexual relationship, so that we can get out of our own way and really be of service and bring our gifts.
Absolutely. There's been so many times in working with a couple where one person will have a really hard time sharing a deep and true desire that they have, for fear that the other will judge them.
Mm-hmm.
And when in fact when they share it, the other person lights up in some way, because they've been wanting approval for their own desire, or even sometimes the exact same thing. It's like, wait, that's what I want too. What have we been doing?
Mm-hmm.
When people actually learn to have that level of approval for both what they want and for bringing what they want to the space of relationship or group.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Um, let's open the call up to people. We've got several people on the line, and I'm curious, what is alive for the people on the call? What questions do you have? What thoughts or ideas got provoked. This is your opportunity to bring your voice into the room. So if you'd like to share something, I invite you to unmute yourself, knowing that this is recorded. So if you want to remain anonymous, just don't mention your name. And if you want to, you're welcome to. I saw someone temporarily unmuted themselves and then remuted themselves. The thing that's on the tip of your tongue, I invite you to share. Going once, going twice. Are you raising your hand? No? Okay. They're good. So, Jamie, I have a quote that I would love to read, and I'm curious if there's anything you want to share as well.
Yeah, while you're reading that, I'm going to try to find something.
Cool.
I wasn't expecting to do this, but it feels right. So go ahead.
Great. So this is a quote. So for those of you who aren't familiar, this is a quote from a woman who calls herself Starhawk. And she's very she's a leader, she's a witch, she's very connected to earth-based medicine and the natural world, and she's written a lot of books around connection to the earth. And this is from a book called Spiral Dance, and it just so much of what I'm inspired by and why I do the relationship coaching that I do is because of my desire to experience real depth of community. So this quote is part of what drives me. We are all longing to come home, to some place we have never been, a place half remembered and half envisioned. We can only catch glimpses of from time to time. Community. Somewhere there are people to whom we can speak with passion, without having the words catch in our throats. Somewhere a circle of hands will open to receive us. Eyes will light up as we enter. Voices will celebrate with us whenever we come into our own power. Community means strength that joins our strength to do the work that needs to be done. Arms to hold us when we falter. A circle of healing, a circle of friends, someplace where we can be free.
Receiving that feels really good.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't find what I was looking for, but that sparks something in me. And I feel like there's this other place that this conversation of jealousy, competition, shadow work leads. And that is, it's kind of Marianne Williamson's famous quote of it's not our darkness, but our light that scares us. And I feel like part of what happens when we see someone else in their power is we see our power. And it might seem like it's in another body. And so we have whatever response to that we do. But ultimately we are seeing ourselves in our highest when we see other people being amazing in whatever way they are. And when we can remember that and really champion that, give ourselves permission to step into that, we are stepping into our own greatness. Mm-hmm. And that's part of what that poem really brought for me.
Mm. Thank you. This is a beautiful conversation, and I really appreciate how this is something that started at the um, kind of the micro of like how individual people relate, and then like expanding to the macro, and
Yeah.
how our decisions and how we choose to engage in our intimate relationships ripples out into how we create community. And I'm really happy that this space can hold both. So thank you for doing the work that you're doing and being able to hold and really like breathe into the conversation.
You too. I mean, something I always appreciate about you, and you know what, we can keep this totally present moment on the court between us as well, because there's this element in you that I am just in complete admiration of. And it's your ability to really share what is on your mind, regardless of how it's going to be perceived. And that's the way that I see you. And one of the things that really had me say yes to doing these calls and lean into this is because this is an edge for me, and it's gotten a lot easier. But I told you, like, sharing personal, vulnerable experiences for me is not something that, I don't know, I just don't, I don't do it so much naturally. And
Mm.
since knowing you, I've started doing it a lot more professionally, and it's really a way in which you've called me forth into a new way of being with my truth and sharing it with even the dirty, vulnerable parts with a different kind of clarity and ownership.
Mm.
And it's, I guess, a way that in this conversation, in this call, in these calls with you, that I transmuted. I didn't realize this until right now, but transmuted what could have been an energy of like, oh, that's triggering, or oh my God, she's so forward, I don't know that I want to step into that. But really saying yes to it, and then feeling this new part of myself come forth.
Mm. Thank you. Thank
Mm-hmm.
you. I appreciate that. And I would love to share like a vulnerability in response of like
Mm-hmm.
a major edge. I'm not even going to say it's a major edge, but like an edge for me has just been, like seeing you, and like my first experience of you is like, oh my God, she's fucking gorgeous. Just this like fucking just beautiful woman. And so much of my like wounding and challenge in college and in high school had always been this story about like, oh, I'm not attractive, I'm like overweight and all these things, and just like this fear of feeling like I could never relate to like the super attractive woman. And then like watching your videos and feeling your composure, I could feel like, oh, this is such a beautiful invitation for me to lean into the places where I compare around physical beauty. And I can just feel like you had reached out to me saying like, oh, like I would love it if you came out to Burning Man. And I can feel like the edge for me of really like embodying like my sexuality, sensuality, like physically in public situations. Like I'm an incredibly sexual, sensual woman, but it tends to only be seen in more like my one-on-one dynamics. And some of the images that I've seen, just how you embody yourself on camera, is something that I have such like, oh, like I want to feel my sensuality in that way. And I want to feel comfort in embodying my sensuality in that way. And being in connection with you and not making myself separate has just been this beautiful way of realizing like, oh, like I am that like exists within me. And I'm really grateful for all of this.
I love hearing that. I love hearing that because it's something that, and I feel like this may apply for you as well. it's like this piece of bringing out sensuality and sexuality and being able to sit in it in whatever way that one wants to, in a healthy, full approval, fully responsible ownership kind of way, is one of my favorite things to like do with people. And I imagine, and I'm not sure, but that bringing out someone's ability to be a little more messy and vulnerable is one of your superpowers. And so by saying yes to these aspects that are a little bit edgy, we both got to trade codes. You know, we got to trade the superpowers and really got to sit in our own version of that without, it's not like doing it like each other, but it's rather allowing each other to inspire the piece in ourself that wants to come forth right now.
I really love that, the trading codes. I've never heard it said that way, but yes, like inviting the people that we desire to like embrace like those different aspects, like allowing ourselves to be permeable and not pushing away, but instead really allowing for it's the idea of reciprocal altruism, one of my favorite terms that I learned in 8th grade science. Like how do we give and simultaneously receive in the process? So this feels like a beautiful expression of that.
Absolutely. And I do hope you come to Burning Man.
I think it's happening. These conversations are already it sounds like it's going to happen. So I'm going to have my buttons pushed in a way that I've been resisting for several years.
Awesome. I love Burning Man virgins. So like I said, I will be there.
Awesome. I look forward to that.
Awesome.
Oh, it's so much fun. I'm glad that everyone on the call got to witness our own little drop in there. Oh goodness. Oh, happy day, everyone. Enjoy your day. Next week at Tuesday, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, we have our last season episode of this season where we're going to be talking about what it means to be an embodied experiential expert and what does it mean to master how we create our reality. So this feels like the topic where like everything that underlies the way Jamie and I do what we do and create how we create is going to come to the forefront and kind of pulling back the veil. So really hoping that you tune in. Jamie, if people want to reach out to you and connect, what's the best way to do that?
The best way is through my personal Facebook, which is facebook.com/Jamie, Jamie, Elizabeth, Elizabeth. Oh, I'm sorry, Miss Jamie Elizabeth, MISS, Jamie Elizabeth. And then also my website, which is JamieElizabethThompson.com.
Thank you. And for those who are wanting to connect with me about group facilitation and private coaching, you can visit my website at www.ariellebrown.com. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in, and we will see you next week.
Bye-bye.